Psalm 105. We're going to pick the narrative of Jewish history up that the psalmist has gone with. We talked a teeny bit about verse 26 last time. He sent Moses his servant and Aaron, whom he had chosen. Just quick rehash. Aaron, I think, was older than Moses, and there are a couple of reasons I think that. One reason is he died before Moses. Second reason is when Moses was born, the edict had gone into effect that all the boy babies of the Israelites were to be killed, thrown into the Nile. And my thought is Aaron would have been before that. So, okay, it doesn't make that much difference. But the point the psalmist is making is he's calling back to two primary figures in Hebrew history. Moses, and he doesn't say Moses, the great lawgiver of Israel. He says Moses, his servant. I attended the funeral of a dear friend this weekend, and I have this thing when I participate in a funeral or attend a funeral. I don't remember ever having a time when it didn't provoke me to consider my own mortality. And I don't think of this in a dark, horrible way. I just think about it's a fact. I'm gonna die, and if Jesus doesn't return before then, my life will end, and I will have some kind of a legacy. Some things will be said about me, and I don't particularly want to have a grave marker. And some people think I joke about this. I'm absolutely serious. I want to be cremated. There's no reason for me to go through the whole expensive process and have to buy a funeral or a burial plot. And I don't need that. But if I did have a tombstone, I struggle with, what do I want on my tombstone? Steve Thomas, great guy. No, I don't want that. I've come down to, I think I want what verse 26 has as Moses' headstone. Moses, God's servant. For that to be true, and you can put anything on a gravestone, right? But for it to be true, I'm going to have to live up to that. I don't know. You don't have to be bothered by my stuff. But I'm going to throw the challenge. Now's as good a time as any to think about. What would you have put on your headstone? My favorite one, I read this or heard it, I think, in a Chuck Swindoll sermon 40 years ago or more. And he said his favorite phrase on a grave marker was, "I told you I was sick." Okay, move on. Aaron, whom he had chosen. Usually it's the older brother who gets the airtime and the top billing, right? Not in this case. Again, my theory is that Moses was the younger of the two. In verse 27, they performed his signs. Whose signs? God's signs among them, his wonders in the land of Ham. And then let's think about for a minute signs and wonders. This is two ideas that are really throughout the entire Bible. Jesus performed signs and wonders. A sign points to something else, right? Just in the most literal sense. In-N-Out Burger. It's an advertisement for or pointing toward the actual In-N-Out Burger place, right? The sign has value because of what or who it points to. The signs that Moses and Aaron did pointed to God, to his authority. And then wonders. These are things that make you wonder, how in the world? Now, when you look at the story of the plagues, the plagues in Egypt, which the psalmist calls the land of Ham, the first few, the Egyptian, Pharaoh's magicians were able to replicate. But then they couldn't. And they said, this is nothing but the hand of God. Well, Pharaoh didn't want to hear that, but the verse 28, he sent darkness and made the land dark. For had they not rebelled against his words? In the book of Exodus, the translation I use is the New International Version. And it says, a darkness that could be felt. The only time I've ever experienced a darkness like that was as a boy. Our family went to Carlsbad Caverns. You take the elevator down, and when they turn the lights out, it's a darkness that you can feel. Well, God sent this darkness, and it was an uncommon darkness. It wasn't like nighttime. It was deeper than night. And there's a reason why he did this. They had rebelled against his words. Now, really, the rebellion was, it wasn't that the Israelites had rebelled against God's word. It was essentially one man, Pharaoh. There's a little thing in here that's probably worth poking at. Pharaoh spoke for the entire Egyptian people, so that when he rebelled against God's word, they also were held accountable for that. It's a kind of a bad deal, but it's still that way, isn't it? Well, okay. Verse 29, he turned their waters into blood, causing their fish to die. This is no small thing. I mean, this is a sign and a wonder. The Nile River, which I'm grateful I got to see it for myself, but it's a big old deep river. It's not the Arkansas. For my friends in Tulsa, that's a shallow river. The Nile is deep, and in the days of the Israelite captivity, one of the main sources of food and nutrition was the Nile River in fish. Well, when God turned the river to blood, not just red, but blood, the fish died. And when that happened, got people's attention. There was no fish for dinner like there had been in virtually every household. Okay, verse 30, their land teemed with frogs, which went up into the bedrooms of their rulers. Now, frogs, I don't know, they're not, I hear them, what do they do? Chirp, squawk, honk, I don't know. I mean, whatever that sound is, it can be annoying, but it's not a deal breaker. The train doesn't stop for it until they are everywhere. Even up into the bedrooms of the Egyptian rulers. They were everywhere. It wasn't like, oh yeah, we had a frog thing. No, they had a frog thing. The other aspect of this that the psalmist doesn't address, but it's in Exodus, there were so many frogs, it got Pharaoh's attention, and he begged Moses to end this particular plague, and Moses prayed and God ended it. But they wound up piling mountains of frogs up, dead frogs. And after a few days, that's not a very pleasant kind of thing. Okay, verse 31, he spoke, and there came swarms of flies and gnats throughout the country. This is vexing. Where we live in Las Vegas, one of the, it's a fun thing for me is that we don't have mosquitoes because we don't have water. Mosquitoes, I mean, they're just not around when there's no water. We don't have flies. We just don't have a flying insect problem. And then when we lived in Tulsa, we had both. You'd want to sit outside. We had a pretty neat little swing in the backyard. Wanted to sit out there, but the mosquitoes and the bugs would just eat you up. Well, that never happens here, and that's kind of a fun thing. But the swarms of flies, not just a few, we're talking about swarms of flies and gnats. That could stop commerce. It could stop, it certainly would stop normal life. And then in verse 32, he turned the rain into hail. Now, Moses had warned them, you're going to need to bring your livestock in and your servants in because there will be rain and hail. And he turned the rain into hail. It killed the livestock that was left out. It demolished the crops with lightning throughout their land. He struck down the vines and the fig trees and shattered the trees of their country. This is destruction. And it got Pharaoh's attention, but it didn't turn his intentions. Verse 34, he spoke, and the locusts came, grasshoppers without number. They ate up every green thing in the land, ate up the produce of their soil. Well, that was a big-time attention getter. They depended on the crops that they grew. That was their subsistence. And when you've got locusts and grasshoppers coming through by the gazillions, they devour everything in their path. But it still didn't get Pharaoh's attention. Well, no, it got his attention. It just didn't change his intention. Well, we'll pick it up here again next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.